Mike won't be complaining because Mike's already here. And good morning, Mike. Welcome, everybody, to Talking Niagara. How's the world treating you today? Well, that's what we're kind of here to talk about, look at. We're here live every weekday morning at 7 a.m. With the news that matters to Niagara's people. And so it's Friday, December 12th. Welcome. Hey, Dave. How's things for you?
Christmas is looming.
Christmas is looming, yes. Only a week and a bit away. Well, actually, nearly 2 weeks away, isn't it? Just under 2 weeks away. Yeah. All right. Okay. So Niagara affordability crisis causes a surge in food insecurity. All right.
Yeah. Here we go again.
Well, actually, I've read through all of this, and the one statistic that bothers me is that Ontario-wide context, more than 1 million Ontarians are using food banks in the last year. That's 1 in 16 people.
Yeah, well, down here it's 1 out of 7 families are using, things like food banks, Project Share, and other things like that. 1 in 7. So you're looking at 15% of the Niagara population.
Yeah.
This is a sad state of affairs, but we keep getting this. Like when I look at this, I can think, well, Niagara. It says like Niagara affordability crisis causes surge in food insecurity. Well, what doesn't? That's just a reworked title over and over and over again. We get it 3 or 4 times a year. Comments about how much we're lagging behind and how much the demand is going up. And this is an ongoing story ever since we began this show.
Yeah. How many times have we heard the story that wages are not going up in Niagara?
Wages not going up. Housing way too high. Housing costs went way too high. Did not follow the regular inflation curve. Went outside of it, and that caused a great deal of stress on people over the years. If you could, and food insecurity, of course, that's gone up. And yet there doesn't seem to be much of an answer, or is there? Because this problem just keeps growing and growing and growing, doesn't it? I mean, it gives reasons here, but I'm not even sure that it's the same old reasons, the same old story. Well, this is the same story that we keep. One of the reasons why I put it in here was to point that out. This is almost exactly the same story we get 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Don't we?
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. And in different ways, it's exactly that. Right.
Yeah, it says food banks and community meal programs have experienced a 20% increase in uptake. Where did we hear that last? Oh, a few months ago. And where did we hear it before that? A few months before that. And where did we hear it before that? A few months before that. This is the same story over and over again.
And what we're getting is households with people who are working, going out to get food bank donations.
Yeah, it says if you look at the trends over the past 10 years, housing has gone up significantly relative to income here in Niagara. And then it goes on. It talks about in December 2019 to December 2025 showed an average monthly price for 1 and 2 bedroom rentals in St. Catharines increased by $480 and $418 respectively. That's a big hunk of increase.
Yeah,
that's huge. And when you're talking and it also reveals here in this article that the average income in St. Catharines is about 45,000, 47,000, something like that. It's in here somewhere, which brings it up to about roughly $22 or $23 per hour. You need that. You need about $23 per hour to break even here. You can self-sustain at $23 an hour, but a huge amount of the people that live in Niagara and work are getting $17 per hour.
Yeah, or less. No, actually, 17 being minimum wage now.
Yeah, which is minimum wage.
Yeah, I missed I'd forgotten the last update. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it says here the average price of a kilogram of ground beef has risen nearly 58% since September 2020 to now, from $9.18 to $15.83. Workforce Collective recently assumed control of living wage portfolio from the United Way and parsed data regarding the hourly wage Niagara's need to receive to make ends meet, and it then goes on to say that you need a minimum of $21.40 an hour, where most people have $17.60.
Yeah. Somebody raised this. I heard a tenant raise this, that if you work for somebody like Walmart and you're paid minimum wage, and and you've got an average typical apartment around here, that Walmart should be forced to actually pay something like $5 an hour towards your landlord.
Here it says the average annual income in the Garden City is $47,560.
Yeah,
or roughly $35,000 after taxes. That works out to be $2,915 a month, or $22.87, so $23 an hour.
Yeah,
and that's cutting it pretty thin.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right down to the bones.
Yeah.
And according to Niagara Region's 2024 point, nearly 80% of the people experience homelessness receive some form of social assistance. So,
well, food bank. The other thing to note is that food bank usage in Pelham rose 154%, and in Niagara on the Lake, 148%. And these are two of the richest areas in our region.
I think probably homeless people kind of roam around and trying to find places where they maybe sustain themselves a little bit better than other places. I don't know.
Well, I get what you're saying.
Maybe they go down to Niagara Lake and expect there was better soup kitchens or anything because it's a more affluent neighborhood.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there is that possibility, and that would enter my mind if I was in that situation.
Yeah,
I'd be going. I might get a higher quality meal in Niagara on the Lake.
Yeah, you get a thicker gruel down in Niagara on the Lake.
Well, somebody is saying goodbye, Polyev.
Oh yeah, Polyev. Yeah, it seems that a little later on in our show
we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we will discuss that a little bit later in our
yeah
today.
And he's still got a review to look forward to in January.
Yeah, that's exactly the first thing I thought of when this latest conservative crossed the floor to the Liberals.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Alberta Territory 8 chiefs demand a pause on pipeline agreement. Hey, do you know? Whenever since I've come to Canada, it almost seems as if that's something we hear every single time. Oh, there's an announcement that something is going to happen, and then 3 weeks later, there's an announcement by the chiefs of the Indigenous people that we're opposed to it.
Yeah, it seems like the federal government is playing this as a misunderstanding. Basically, they're saying that we don't consult the chiefs until we have a possible project.
Yeah,
and the chiefs are saying before you even begin with a possible project, we should be entered into it. Now, what the feds are saying is that's too long and belabored. So what we do is we'll just kind of figure out what is a possible thing we can do. And right now they have the possibility, a very good possibility, of moving bitumen through Alberta into BC across native land. And of course, the natives are flipped right out. Hey, no, you don't. No, way, you don't. No, you don't. And nothing's being built. No wrenches have been turned out. No shovel is dug into the ground. So according to the feds, that once they have a possible project, then they go into the consulting.
So in other words,
go into consulting with the chiefs. Now the chiefs are all
so
put out
in other words,
they weren't part of the consulting process in the beginning.
So in other words, what I'm hearing here is the federal government has announced an ideal. There is no companies bidding for the project. There is no actual work going on it. There's actually just an ideal that has been signed in some form of memorandum of understanding between Alberta and the federal government. Great. Okay, that's a nice, we would like to do this project, right? So nobody's actually yet signed up for it. You haven't had any oil company or anybody else sign up for it. And I get it that actually this might be the point that, well, when does a memorandum of understanding become a project? Quite a long way down the line. It's not going to happen tomorrow, right? And you've got to take these things in stages, really.
I can sympathize with federal and government and the Alberta government at this particular time, because if they went through the lengthy process of looking for all kinds of input on a project that isn't even realized yet, that would just stall things right up. So what they've done is said, here is a good possibility for a pipeline right here. This is a possible project that we can do to accelerate Canada's economy going forward. And now that we have that possibility, we will now consult with the native groups in there. But the native groups are put out of joint because they felt they should have been part of the process from the very beginning. But you can understand if they've got something like, I don't know, so many different chiefs. If you could imagine everybody in the same room bickering about how this project would it ever get off the ground. I think in Kearney, I don't know if he's being sly about this, but is more or less looking for forgiveness rather than permission. Well, first of all,
yeah, and in fact, I was just about to say that exactly that, Dave. Sometimes it's like, actually do commit yourself to a particular project, because it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission in the first place. Make the decision.
We don't know. Yeah, we don't know how well the native groups negotiate. I'm pretty convinced that lately they have lawyers and all that other stuff to negotiate, but they definitely don't want to be left out of the loop. I think it's impossible for them to be left out of the loop.
Yeah,
because a lot of this pipeline stuff's got to go over their traditional lands, et cetera, et cetera. But on the other and a lot of them want this work for their communities. Definitely, like they want wealth and to come into their communities. They want job skills to be learned by their young men and women to perpetuate the community. You need wealth and you need education and all that. This will help that. I don't think there's too many Indigenous chiefs that don't understand that you can be completely independent, but if you're poverty stricken all the time and your community is going to collapse, you need some source of income. So I think pretty much this is huff and bluster, people beating their chests, and I think it will get smoothed over because in the long run, there is money to be made. There's prosperity to be had by the Indigenous folk as well. So even the BC premiers who were complaining about it, are really doing it sort of on the down low because they know the prosperity that will bring to BC as well. You know, you've got this heavy crude bitumen pumping through these lines and being loaded up into ships. Nobody likes the sound of it. Nobody likes what it looks like environmentally, but cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. It is huge coin. And the world has a huge demand. And the bitumen, that bitumen is used mostly for ships. Ships use bitumen. Heavy bunker C, it's also called, and they use it. There is a huge amount of energy in bitumen. Bitumen is thick and it's very viscous. It has to be heated up in order to be even used or pumped. But once it has an incredible amount of stored energy in it. That's why you wonder why it's used. Well, that's why. It's cheap and it has incredible amounts of stored energy in it. So I think this will go ahead. And I think pretty much Carney must have known that he was ruffling feathers, and that's pun intended, basically, when he went ahead and made a deal with Smith. And probably Smith and him said, oh, well, now the next thing we're going to have to deal with is the outrage of the Indigenous chiefs. And once we're done with that, we'll promise them this and promise them that. And hopefully convince them that their own communities will prosper with the newfound wealth.
I think their communities do prosper with these proposals.
Yes, but they have to be very careful here. It used to be they just used to cut through their land, give them some money and all that.
Yeah.
Now they have to be much more careful. I want jobs. We want jobs. We want training. We want.
Well, I think they should have jobs.
Of employment.
Yeah, I think they should have jobs, training, and continual employment.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest concerns now, and other benefits that might come. They're in a situation where they could negotiate. How much wealth they can get out of it.
We can't guarantee continual employment now, right? But still.
Well, that's up to the community themselves, because they definitely will get preferential treatment for jobs, and that can be written right into the contract. That X amount of Indigenous people have to be brought in, and
I know it can be written into the contracts. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the thing is. But again, such contracts is providing qualified Indigenous people are available, probably.
Yeah. So anyway, I think it'll probably get smoothed over. But now that I think it's kind of like the obligatory huff and bluster that has to happen every time any one of these projects begin or end, whether it's mining, whether it's a road, whether it's anything, that if it goes across Indigenous land, you always have this kind of a protest type of.
Well, that's par for the course for Canada, right? For creation of anything in Canada.
Yeah, and I can understand why that happens, because previously the needs of our Indigenous populations were overlooked and set aside, but nowadays they're better qualified to deal with government and big business, and they can exercise their whatever the leverage they have.
Yeah,
and we kind of expect that.
All right. I think anything else on that?
No, I just expect that it'll be smoothed over.
It will. I'm pretty sure it will. We hear this every single time.
The bitumen line will be started within a year or two.
Yeah, and we hear this with every Canadian project, though.
Yeah, there's always a hang up, and if it isn't with the Indigenous folks, it's with the environmental people. Yeah. And sometimes the two are the same. Sometimes a lot of the Indigenous people have environmental concerns because they live on pristine woodlands or property, and they could see potential disaster happening to where they live environmentally, and that's a real concern as well.
Okay.
But on the other hand, each one of these indigenous communities needs a certain amount of wealth to prosper, and that's important as well.
All right. Okay. So orcas and dolphins are collaborating to hunt salmon. Oh, that was interesting.
That was very interesting. So you have what is happening now is something very, very peculiar. They used to think that these particular dolphins, what do they call white bottom dolphins or
White,
something?
Pacific white-sided dolphins, I think, is what they're
Yeah,
called.
white-sided dolphins. They're a pretty big one. And what they used to observe, they used to think that the dolphins used to be a pain in the neck for the orcas that were hunting salmon. They thought that the white-sided dolphins would come along and steal some of their catch, basically kind of poach what the orcas were doing. Now it seems on further study that this is not the case at all, that the dolphins are the ones that dive down and identify where the salmons are. The orcas then follow them and kill the salmon, crunch it, and what happens to the dolphins, they get the scraps that are left over. The dolphin is not big enough to take on a big salmon on its own, but it can eat up the scraps.
Yeah. Yeah. So in fact, actually, you couldn't eat an entire salmon. That dolphin couldn't eat an entire salmon. So they're cooperating with the orcas. They managed to do so.
Well, they can't slay it and eat it as whole, but what the orcas do is they crunch it, they share bits of some of it with their others, and there's leftover stuff that and that's what the dolphins eat up. So now you have what is thought to be a symbiotic relationship, much different than before.
And the interesting thing is that as part of this hunt, the orcas go silent, right? Because both these animals communicate via, clicks on a subsonic level, don't they? Sonar type clicks. And what happens is orcas are silent as they're waiting, and then all of a sudden they hear the communication from the dolphins, and as at that point, then they start to move.
Yes, the orcas shut up and they let the dolphins do the sounding, and find the fish. And what you have is a dolphin diving after a fish and an orca going after it behind it. Then the orca then attacks the fish, chomps it, shares a bit of it with maybe another orca, and then the dolphins gobble up what's left over. That seems to be working for them fairly well.
Yeah.
Which is really amazing because prior to this, it was just like the dolphins were kind of swimming around, poaching anything they could get. And that was the thought of the marine biologists at the time. But now they find that at least with this particular pod. Now it may not work out this way with other ones, but we find that in very intelligent species like orcas and dolphins and pilot whales and so on, we find unusual adaptations depending on where they are in the world and who is with them, who is their neighbors. In this particular case, these pods of dolphins now work with these pods of orcas, and that might not happen anywhere else where white-sided dolphins and orcas exist, but at least here with the salmon hunt, it is.
Yeah, and it means, and I think this salmon hunt only goes on for a short period of time anyway, because it's typically in the fall when the salmon have got to return to the BC rivers to spawn, or at that particular time, whenever that occurs. Don't know what time.
I think some of the orcas eat salmon all year round because there's lots of salmon out there. Like in the sea. I imagine they could probably really splurge and eat up a whole lot when it comes time to spawning.
The salmon are at their best when in the fall, when they're coming upstream to actually lay their eggs and coming back to BC to lay their eggs.
I don't know exactly when they spawn.
No, neither do I. I believe it's in the autumn, but I could be wrong. Yeah.
Well, I thought it was closer to the springtime, but I'm not so sure myself actually, because I thought it would, if it was in the springtime, then they would have more time to develop when the warmer water.
Yeah. I don't know. It's not something I know. It happens every year, but I just don't know what time of year it is. You know, basically, it happens for both Atlantic salmon and for Pacific salmon.
Yes, and in this particular case, the dolphins and the orcas are hunting Chinook salmon.
Yeah,
and I think they should share one with me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll be a symbionix. I'll be just hanging around. And once I saw fish, I was watching the orcas hunting fish out west, in and close to Vancouver there, and so all the orcas are all around trying to gather up all the fish, and right beside the boat, right exactly where I was looking, a fish leapt out of the water, just like you see on the shows where they're leaping up the streams at spawning time. So this this salmon leapt out of the water, huge arc like this, and right behind it with a gapping maw was an orca right following it like this. So here's the fish and here's this mouth following it, right into the water. I think the fish got away that time, but probably got caught up to him later. But that was awesome.
Right. Well, there's actually been a discussion going on between SRCX Climate Research and Mike Cushman about potential earthquakes on the West Coast. All right.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's an earthquake zone anyway.
It is an earthquake zone.
It's right on the edge of the Pacific Ring of Fire. We talk about the Ontario Ring of Fire, but that is
Ring of Fire. Different Ring of Fire, though.
It's not an active Ring of Fire in Ontario, but the Ring of Fire is a result of a massive comet or
Good morning, Rick.
Many years ago. But the active Ring of Fire is a big ring around the Pacific of plate tectonics.
Active earthquake zones with subduction, moving zones, subduction and moving zones all around there, and it's the world's most dangerous place to live.
Yeah, if you look at the Atlantic, right through Iceland and right down the middle, everything's moving out. It's moving apart like that. And where it's moving apart, that's where the volcanoes start coming up. But on the other hand, on the west, it's different. You have one plate hammering into another, and one diving down and the other coming on top. That causes the earthquake, and it also causes the breaches where the volcanoes come out.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Another conservative crosses the floor.
Here we go. This is where we get into the whether or not Poilievre will keep his post as leader of the Conservative Party.
Yep. Because, in fact, what has happened is Ontario MP Michael Marr, who's from Markham Unionville, announced Thursday he's leaving the Conservative caucus and joining the Liberals. And yet on Wednesday, he was at the Conservative Christmas party.
Yeah. I guess I don't know. That sounds so peculiar to me. Maybe he didn't want to tip his hand just yet.
Probably.
Maybe he wanted his dibs. He put his money in for the Christmas party. He wanted to make sure he got his hunk of turkey, and and maybe his little present, whatever. But that's bad news for Poilievre. It's bad news for the Conservatives all in all. We find that a lot of Conservatives are looking at Mark Carney and thinking, well, no, he's got a better idea. And their own Conservatives don't have that good of an idea, and they don't like Poilievre's leadership style. Although in the beginning, Poilievre's leadership style were able to rein in a lot of loose cannons in the Conservative Party and discipline them. But now is the point where they don't feel that that Poilievre's style of leadership is that good, at least some of them anyway.
Well, Poilievre's style of...
and let's face it, Carney has pretty much stole all their ideas, right?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, Poilievre's leadership style worked with Trudeau, and whether he liked it or not, everything Trudeau said happened to kind of ignite Poilievre. So Trudeau was a real igniter of Poilievre, and kind of and he probably was never conscious of the fact that everything he did played into Poilievre's hands. That's why they had a 25% margin back a year ago.
Yes. The only thing is, though, that Poilievre's leadership style made certain people uncomfortable. To me, I thought it was a very effective style.
But it does.
It got to the point where the character assassination could only go so far. And then when Carney came in, he could not, of course, do any of that. Plus the fact that Carney stole all their ideas. Okay, no carbon tax, gone. No carbon tax, gone. And a push for more pipelines and more infrastructure and more mines. All the things that the Liberals had resisted, their environmental arm of the Liberals are resisted in ideological bent. Carney looks around and says, oh no, well, you may have a good argument about environment here, but we do have a practical need, and that means money and wealth and trade acumen. And so the business mind that is, and we talk like they talk about Trump being the business mind south of the border. Oh, he's a businessman. That's what we need. Well, we really do have a businessman in Carney. And he's also a pretty good diplomat. He can maneuver around. So this particular guy says, okay, well, he looks like he says in consultation with the people of his riding, he decided to cross the floor.
And at the end of the day, Markham Unionville, prior to this April election, was in fact actually a fairly strong Liberal seat. But what happened is the Liberal who was there, who was on that riding, decided to step down. And so I'm not getting the guys. So Markham Unionville had previously been held by Liberal Paul Chiang, right? So he stepped down in the spring, withdrew some comments, withdrew from the race over comments he'd made suggesting that another Conservative candidate could be turned into a Chinese consulate for collecting a bounty, to collect a bounty. So in other words, he'd made a bad statement. He made a bad mistake. He decided it was time to go. And of course, when the new MP was elected, he might have gotten 50% of the vote, but it was in a traditional Liberal seat.
Well, now let's talk about Poilievre's leadership. Is this indication that Poilievre may be in trouble? His leadership might be in trouble. When the first couple of people, when one crossed the floor, Entremont crossed the floor, and the other fellow from out west decided not to engage himself and not cross the floor, but actually retire basically and leave in a few months, but would not participate in the parliament. When those two things happen, Poilievre, it didn't look good for Poilievre, but it didn't look as if it's going to be that much of a difference. But now you've got another one going, and right now Mark Carney is one seat shy of a
victory,
of having a majority. And all he needs is to get one more from any party. He could get one from the NDP if one of those NDP who
Well,
are on tenuous
here's some of
ground,
the chatter.
they might want to cross the floor too.
Here's some of the chatter I've been hearing, which may or may not be true. Apparently, there were certain things promised to Elizabeth May when she supported the budget that she's now pissed off because they backtracked on that. Yet to hear about that. There's potentially at least 6 more Conservatives that are considering their future. I'm not saying they're looking at crossing the floor. I'm just saying they're considering their future.
Yeah, well, Elizabeth May, they always screw her over anyway. I mean, she's the only one that had the courage to point out that Netanyahu was acting like a war criminal and the IDF was doing terrible things, and she was roundly booed by all the different parties. That's because they're all afraid to say or do anything. And but she had the courage to do it. And she may have made a deal with the Liberals here, but what choice does she have otherwise? Now, if she doesn't support the Liberals, then she opens the door for an election, and she will be found partly responsible for bringing on that election if she does, if she brings it on for reasons that would not justify it. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why she has to be very, very careful about her vote. Her vote right now makes a big difference, doesn't it? Yeah. When there's only one vote from a majority. I think that's what the article says. There's one shy of a majority. I don't know. Somewhere in there must be a tie.
Yeah, there was always possibility of that. So Poilievre's leadership review is the 29th to 31st of January 2026. Right.
Well, what I see about Poilievre, he didn't get the message from the Ontario Conservatives, did he, during the time of the federal election? They did very well, very, very well overall, the Conservatives, when you really look at it. I mean, they were expected to win for most of that time, but they did very well in the long run. They made a huge lot of gains.
But they made a lot of advances in Ontario.
They didn't heed the warning of Ontario Conservatives, who said that, you're going down the wrong path. You're definitely you're sounding Trump-like and populist-like, and you're not going to win if you do that. And they were right. And I think Poilievre hasn't learned that lesson.
Yeah,
he has not learned that lesson. He made a lot of gains when he was an attack dog against Trudeau, but that won't work against Carney.
And again, it's a style thing, right? Because he was the right Conservative leader to attack Trudeau, right? Because Trudeau was seen increasingly ineffective against Poilievre. But Poilievre doesn't have the same kind of charisma when trying to go after Carney. All right, he's not making any ground going after Carney because as soon as because Carney's got way more economic nous than does Poilievre. He's you can criticize the budget all you want, and we've criticized the budget, but Carney comes out on top on a lot of those things, right? In any debate, it always seems that that Carney is beating Poilievre right now.
Well, look, Carney's not a blackface drama teacher, is he?
Yeah, exactly.
He's not a guy that tries to use throw slurs of racism at his opponents like Trudeau did, and then have it bounce back in his face because he was a drama teacher that got into blackface several times. That kind of thing. He's a drama teacher, and he's full of idealistic talking points, and he said all the right things, but he didn't do all the right things. Yeah. Carney, you can't go after Carney like that. Carney has chops. Carney was the Bank of Canada governor. He was the Bank of England governor. He has made a fortune on his own. So he's a successful businessman, and he has been the governor of two major banks, two major democratic banks in the world. So you tell me how Polyev can compare to that. Now he could throw barbs at the drama teacher, but he cannot throw barbs at a successful millionaire. You know,
he has to come up with a different set of barbs to go against Carney. It's all about style and whatever you want. It's all about his style versus Carney's style. And at the moment, it seems that Carney's beating him hand over fist.
Well, he has to change his tactic, and the only thing he can do is pretty much what I get. You're doing what you should be doing, but in eighths instead of fulls. Full measure. You're doing it in tiny measures. You're saying this and you're saying that, but you're not really going full throttle. That kind of thing. That's part of it, I would say. Polyev definitely has to come up with a different take. Now, what I would like if Polyev did in his party sort of join in with the Liberals on things that are essential to really fast track the economy, interprovincial economy in Canada, and help with some of the major things and get on board with some of them, basically. But then leave other things to complain about. Right now, Carney's got momentum and Polyev doesn't.
Yeah, our climate research person says, given the political crisis in the US, we need decisive action right now. No bickering back and forth. We just need decisive action against them. Right? Our resources are for sale to the highest bidder.
Yeah, they're just going dumber than dumb down there. They're trying to restrict potash, and they don't make potash. They make very little potash. They need our potash. They need our nickel. They need our aluminum. So they're just kind of shooting themselves in the foot right now. There's a kind of a disorganization going on down that way. And they're trying to maneuver. I don't know. I seriously don't know what they're up to. I think they're just getting stupid.
Well, and here's one comment that you'll appreciate. It's all about Newton's third law of action and reaction.
For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Right. Rick says Carney is a businessman. Money. Canada is for sale. Trade is done. I'm not so sure that Canada's for sale, but I don't think trade is done at all. I think we just got to switch where we're going.
Yeah, we happen to be in a very one of the warnings back in the original NAFTA consultations. One of the original warnings is if the U.S. decides they want to control us, they can really put us on our back foot. We are very vulnerable to backlash from the United States, no matter what it is. If they decide they don't like the NAFTA agreement or they don't like the trade thing, they can do what they want. Well, we found that happens now with the president using his emergency powers. That's exactly what has happened. We have found ourselves to be extremely vulnerable to the whims of the U.S. When they don't, the winds blow against us from down there. So we find probably that that we will have to secure ourselves in broadening our trade networks within provinces and outside of away from the United States, or at least find alternates to the United States to buffer this kind of action, to reduce the effect of it. But on the other hand, I think as soon as a sensible government returns to the United States, things will change back again. But we'll always have to be cognizant of the fact that we could be vulnerable to whims of an American.
We need to open up our markets to elsewhere. Right?
Yeah.
And again, one of the things you just were saying there is there's new border rules in terms of the US entering the US now, because they're talking about requiring selfies and 5 years of social media history.
Yeah, they're bound and determined they're going to destroy their tourist industry, aren't they?
Yeah.
Tourism from Canada,
Well,
but all over the world has been reduced drastically
well,
into the United
actually,
States.
one of the things the Law Society basically has said is put all your storage on the cloud. Make sure you don't have any on your local computer. If they want to look at, take, and this is coming from the Law Society. If you're going on a trip to the USA, take a burner phone.
Yeah, the thing that bothers me the most there is like I use my phone for everything basically, and let's say I want to look up the Communist Manifesto and read about that, and I happen to have been reading about it 2 weeks before I go across the border, and they say, aha, what's this here? This Communist Manifesto doing here? I says I was reading it to figure it out, and you got stuff here unmarked. Well, what about that? Are you revolutionary? Because of the profound ignorance that the Americans in general, Canadians too, but border guards and that kind of thing have. They might not understand it. Look, I was reading it to understand it. That kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Doesn't mean I support it, right?
Exactly. You know what I mean? So that's the kind of thing I kind of worry about. That you might be just looking around and studying a few things.
Also, okay. So, I take photos on this thing. Do I take selfies? Well, A, I don't recognize the word selfie, and B, I don't take pictures of myself. It's not me.
Good luck with telling the border guard I don't recognize the word selfie, and they'll just say, "Well, we do." So,
but I don't take pictures of myself. It's called a self-portrait if you want to use the proper word.
Well, there's a lot of proper words that are out there. That
I agree. And
anyway, the whole idea here is a lot of people are going with burners and things like that, and I think I am afraid of being the border guards misconstruing something that they don't understand and they're ignorant of. We found that I think a Danish guy and another Brit got turned away because they had funny pictures of J.D. Vance or something on their phone. That kind of thing. It's not really established that was the real reason why they were confused.
And again, where there's so many things on social media, just because you clicked on a post that criticizes Trump or Vance doesn't mean to say that's your opinion.
But the thing is, it's up to their discretion.
Yeah.
And my problem is that when I go to the United States or I talk to border guards, sometimes when I talk to border guards, I found them profoundly ignorant. And I mean, but lately I found them very good, basically better, well educated. But in the United States in particular, there is an enormous amount of ignorance. Like, they're not stupid people, but they are not well educated down there. I mean, we're not well educated up here, but we got a little bit of an edge. Like most of us have a little bit more general knowledge, but down there, they don't even know their own states, basically. So that's where I'm worried about, is somebody being misconstruing something on the phone, especially in their heightened sense of paranoia brought on by ICE and so on.
Yeah. And that always bothers me, because the thing is, just because you use the Communist Manifesto, statement, it's like, well, if you don't read, it's easy to understand that that people say Marx believes in X, Y, and Z, right? But unless you go and read what Marx actually said, you don't know whether that is true. And the mere fact that somebody said that Marx believes in XYZ doesn't make it so. So finding out for yourselves is a good thing.
Marx is a hero in China right now, and people will come to where Marx was born in Germany.
Yeah,
I think he was born in the 1830s, maybe before that.
Trier,
anyway, so
Trier in Western Germany. Yeah.
So he's almost like a religious figure to communists. What happens with communism is that, as it's interpreted by Leninism, Bolshevism, Leninism, and Stalinism, and Maoism, it does not really come out too close to what Karl Marx had envisioned.
Yeah. Well, and again, actually, Marx's grave in London is one of London's top tourist resort places.
Sure, I wouldn't mind going seeing that myself. I maybe even have. I can't remember, but
I've seen it. I've seen it.
But it's almost like a shrine to certain people, and those are the people that look at me.
Yeah.
So some people think. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying it's a shrine by people who believe in Marx. It was created by communists. It was updated. They moved his body from one part of the cemetery to another so they could build a big shrine to Marx. I think it was done by the communists in the 1920s. The current grave, and obviously he died in 1880 something.
Well, every person is a controversial figure. Obviously, the communists who read Marx revere him. Other people put him down because of the result of what is Stalin and Maoism. But across the street from here, they had a huge celebration for Mother Teresa. A lot of South Asian Catholics were there. They had a big parade. They had a big effigy of Mother Teresa.
Yeah.
But if you talk to many people, Mother Teresa was kind of like a monster, a vicious person, someone that does not deserve a whole lot of respect. So there you have it. You have the two sides of Mother Teresa, and you also have the two sides of Karl Marx. Karl Marx was primarily an economist, and he looked at things. He's kind of like Freud in a way. Freud was a pioneer in psychology, and he was totally wrong about just about everything he talked about if you believe modern psychologists. But the fact of the matter is he opened the door and he started asking questions. He may have drawn the wrong conclusions, but he is the guy that began it. And so too would be Karl Marx and his ideas of economy and social status in developing a society. And what he found, of course, was whoever owns the means of production is the wealthy one and will subdue and suppress the workers. And the workers have one thing in which they have that they can use to have their power, and that is their collective
bargaining power,
collective labor.
Yeah,
their collective labor is the thing in which they can use. So we find that with unions and how they do that with unions. But you extrapolate that to communism, right?
Yeah, but again, Marx wrote his thing from the 1820s to the 1880s, and was cognizant of what was going on in the world at the time, which is why he did his research. And his main book, of course, is Das Kapital, which is a description of how capitalism works at that particular time. One of the things to be remembered is Das Kapital is not a description of how capitalism works today, right? And it's different than, for example, Smith's Wealth of Nations and his description of capitalism.
Smith's vision of capitalism hasn't really faltered much over time. It's very solid analysis.
Well, Smith's version was, remember, written back when Smith was alive, right?
Yeah, just at the right at the very beginning of the Industrial Revolution.
Yes,
Now was beginning.
exactly. And he was
But
describing what capitalism was, and in the same way as in Das Kapital, Marx describes what capitalism is 100 years later.
Marx was afraid of certain things happening in as the wealthy people suppressed the poor people, and we find that this was really happening.
Yeah, and he was talking
as the Industrial Revolution came into into Central Europe in the 1840s, 1850s. We found a real suppression of the workers. There was a huge amount of poverty at the time. The Irish famine was only one famine that went across all of Europe at that time. That around the 1844, and people lived in miserable conditions. However, the revolutions that were successful, the communist revolutions that were successful, happened in rural countries. The Soviet Union was basically a rural country where 80% of the people were farm peasants.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And the same thing when it happened in China. Marx's vision of a communist government was in industrialized countries, heavily industrialized.
Britain, France, Germany, that type of thing.
Yeah, and it just didn't factor out that way. But in order to think of Marx as a monster or a prophet, as we find that Marx is viewed that way, just like Mother Teresa is viewed as a saint or a sinner. You could do that with every person. Like it would look at the criticism that Churchill's getting these days. You know, a lot of, but he was an important figure in history. You know.
And again, just because you've read one particular thing or commented upon one particular thing doesn't mean that you're a dangerous person if you're crossing the US border.
Yes. And we'll come right back to that. So if you're reading about Das Kapital and you're wondering, about, just having, I'll do that all the time. I'll read about, something. And one day I might be reading about, now I really have to worry about, I'm going to go in the States for a couple. Maybe I shouldn't read about communism or socialism or Al Qaeda or ISIS or something like that. Something that might be interesting. I try to know something because it can't be misconstrued.
In fact, from my viewpoint upon that is that my reading is going to go almost everywhere. So I'll go from reading Das Kapital to The Art of War or something like that, right?
Oh yeah, by Sun Tzu. Yeah, I've got that book somewhere.
So that's the way that I do my reading is, and I'd probably read 5 or 6 chapters from one book before moving on to something entirely different. And what I've got on my desk right now is a book on pictures in the Niagara region of pictures of places of natural beauty in the Niagara region.
See, and some border guard would look at that and say, aha, you're looking for smuggling routes for illegals coming into the States. Aha, you see that? You see what I mean? So it's whatever can be misconstrued by the border guard.
Yeah.
And what I said earlier, too, is they're just about trying to kill any kind of tourist industry they have left by putting ridiculous conditions on people coming into the United States. I could see that for marginal people. I could see that maybe for people coming from, I don't know, certain countries that may have, you may suspect have problems with, I don't know. I just can't see it from an average ordinary person coming to travel. Anyone coming from Western Europe going through that would be almost stupid. Anyone coming from Canada having to go through that would be almost stupid. The amount of effort and time and money spent on that would be ridiculous. And to reduce the amount of tourism and tourism dollars because of that is just plain stupid.
Well, here's my question on this one, Dave. Is I have an Access card, so I drive up
So do I.
Pardon me?
So do I.
Yeah. So if I drive up to the Peace Bridge, for example, I run down the Nexus lane and show my Nexus card. Typically, those people there are just passing through.
Yeah, but you might be stopped now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I noticed your color is red, and red is the color of the communist flags everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
You are commie pinko. Admit it, Giblet.
but again, no, my car is red to support the Republicans in the U.S.
Well, just your luck you would have a Democrat as a border guard.
Yeah.
Now, you wouldn't be calling you a communist, you'd be calling you a fascist pig. You Nazi?
Yeah. And the thing is, everything is changing for travelers, and one of the things they're talking about this is it's going to impact all those people that are heading to the US for the World Cup next year.
Yeah, that is a big deal. And there should be a huge windfall for the United States from people coming into the United States and Canada and Mexico too, because it's a shared thing, that there could be a lot of good money being made from tourism, about money coming into the country.
Yeah.
But they seem to be shooting themselves in the foot in the U.S. They have this general paranoia of safety and not letting bad people into the country. I mean, they do have the experience of letting in the Al-Qaeda operatives that knocked over the trade towers and flew into the Pentagon. So they still have that fear in them, but they have a general fear of a xenophobic fear now that's moving, that you can't trust anyone. You can't trust anyone from outside the country. They might have a bomb. They might have some drugs, that kind of thing. So it isn't a healthy. It's not a healthy thing when you get paranoid. It isn't. We saw what happened we are now experiencing something very similar to the McCarthy era, where you had misplaced terror of communists. Were communists around? Yeah, they were. Were socialists around? Yeah, they were. But they went total paranoia on it.
Besides which, the US needed to be more concerned about, anyway, I don't know.
Yeah. So that
Nick says 2026 is going to be interesting. And our climate research person says there's never been a functioning democracy in the US. Read Howard Zinn and A People's History. Yeah, I've read that.
I did read that. I did read that. Yeah, I did read that.
That was quite funny, actually, in parts.
It's pretty important to kind of get down to the reality of situations sometimes and how they really develop. But I mean, it is a fight towards, a democracy, a fair system for all, and it's a constant battle. Anyway, because money makes so much of the difference. Whether you are an Ottoman Sultan back in 1600, controlling the trade routes going through and around Africa and Europe, and making sure you have that wealth, and going off to war to make sure that you capture this territory or that territory where trade comes through, or you're the British Empire, or right now the United States imperial power, trying to limit the power of your rivals like China. It's an ongoing thing. So on one side of it has nothing to do with morals and ethics. It has to do with wealth and power. But on the other side, how do you function without morals and ethics in a society? So, you need them too.
I got a final word to say before we say goodbye to everybody. Happy Independence Day, Kenya.
Oh, Kenya's Independence Day? I applaud you, Kenya.
12th of December, 1963. There you go.
I applaud you, Kenya. Applaud you. And I see you're going through some difficult times now, and Tanzania, and your neighbor, Tanzania beside you too. I hope that all sorts itself out. soon. But anyway, congratulations.
There's always been skirmishes between Kenya and Tanzania, according to my Kenyan friends. A lot of Kenyan friends.
Well, yeah. Well, your in-laws come from Kenya, so
Exactly. So I know a lot of Kenyan people, believe it or not. Anyway, all right. So there we go, and it's time to say goodbye. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, all of the people who've contributed today. It is nice chatting and hearing from you. I'd like to know more about you, SRX, SRCX Climate Research, who you are, etc., etc. Welcome to the show, and Dave.
I would just always mention Gaza, and I'm going to do that until there's peace there. And the yellow line, I think, is a bit of a scam. I would suggest that everybody keep their eye on it as it's being pushed to the back pages right now. That is a flare-up zone, and it is imperative that the West do something finally that is fair to the Palestinians. That has never happened yet. And anyway, without further ado, I bid you adieu.
All right. Thank you. Yep. And goodbye.